Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the shop. So today we are working on a settee. This is a very traditional piece that I actually designed and we offer on our website. You can buy these and we ship them all over the world. So by the time you're seeing this, I've already turned the legs and made all the bottom aprons to fit there. So I'm actually taking it apart so that way I can fit the chair backs and the arms. You can see there, I just hit myself with the mallet. It felt good. So I'm just taking this apart. And what you're seeing here is I'm actually going through and I'm marking all my legs and my aprons so that way they can go back the way I took it apart. So I usually mark A, B, C, D on one side, and then on the opposite side, so I'll mark 1, 2, and 3, 4. It's pretty important we go through and we mark all those because I actually hand fit all my tenons to fit into every mortise. So I want it to go back together the way that I intended it, so that way we have nice, good, perfect fits. And this will be a piece of furniture that will last for a very long time, which is the goal and what we go for around here. So what you're seeing here, I'm just cleaning up these aprons. I'm taking a hand plane and just taking off any of the milling marks left over from the joiner table saw or the planer. Kind of slid out of my vise there a little bit. And I'm actually going to reach for a number 5 here. And you can hear when I'm cutting, you can tell when it's flat because you can hear the skipping of the plane. Starts out and it has that ch-ch-ch. And then as it gets flat, you can hear that was more of a solid ch. And that tells me by the sound, by just listening, when my piece is actually flat. And I just keep working until I actually hear that. You can also tell by the shavings. So then, since this is walnut, I actually pre-raised the grain with a little bit of water after it dried. I'm just coming back with 220 and taking out any kind of plain tracks or flattening it after I raised the grain to get it ready, because we're actually going to spray this with a water-based finish. And then what you're seeing here is I'm coming in with a number 3 and just chamfering the edges. I actually prefer to use the number 3 over a block plane for my hands. I just have a little bit more control. Checking my sides there, flipping it over and getting the other side. And as I do this, I'm counting my strokes. So on each side, I'm doing 3 strokes. And you see I do 1, 2, and there's 3. That way, every chamfer is very uniform with each other. All right, so what you're seeing I'm doing here is I'm coming in with a marking gauge and I'm just marking for my mortises. We're going to cut these mortises out. We're going to take it over to the Oliver mortiser and we're going to cut those out there. And as you'll see, I had to kind of contemplate on this for a while, figure out how to do this. I wasn't real sure how I was going to do this, and I put quite a bit of thought into it. So you'll see coming up here. We also have to be pretty careful. These can only be about 3/4 of an inch deep, so we don't go into the previous mortises. So here you'll see, it was actually quite embarrassing how long I had to sit and contemplate over this. Sitting here, I wasn't real sure how I was going to put this in the mortiser and cut these out. I thought about doing them with the router, and I was like, there's not big enough to do with the router. There's too many to do by hand. Then I actually grabbed a piece of plywood, I clamped it to the piece of plywood, and that seemed to work out. What you're seeing I did here is I marked a line on the edge of the piece, and I'm just setting my depth for my chisels. And then now we start actually cutting out the mortises. This Oliver mortiser is such an awesome machine. I'm really happy to have it. It's a total time saver. It works really well. Before I had this, I used to do them all either by hand or I do them with a router, and it took a really long time. And this machine is just so accurate. I love how straight it gets all the mortises. So after we get that done, I'm taking, these are one of the other parts. So I'm just taking a hand plane, cleaning up the end, cleaning up the bandsaw marks off of that, cleaning up the end grain there, trying to get it flat. So I have a flat reference side to actually mark for my tenons. And then again, with these pieces being curved, it was a little bit challenging again on here. So I actually took my stair rule, clamped it to my pencil line, and then now I'm coming in with a knife and creating a knife line. And these will be my actual shoulder lines for my tenons. And just marking and coming over and marking the other sides. So you're gonna see what I'm doing here is I'm kind of just trying to find my depth. You don't want to go too deep, so I'm just checking. I take a little bit off each time. I offer it up to the piece, check it, and I've actually did this quite a few times off camera. It usually takes a little bit to get that dialed in. And I'm actually gonna leave them a little bit proud, and then I'll come in with a rabbet plane and actually dial them in for that perfect fit. All right, and then after I got that dialed in, I'm actually just registering it against my fence, and I'm coming real close to my knife line. I'm actually not going completely to my knife line. I'm going just a little bit shy of it, and then I'll chisel down, pare down into that actual knife line, so I have perfect shoulder lines. If these pieces had came off the table saw with a cross-stitch sled, I would have probably just taken the dado stack right into the knife line. But since they came off the bandsaw, I wanted to leave them a little bit shy and clean them up with a chisel, so I have those perfect lines. What you're seeing I'm doing here is I'm just lining it up, registering it, and I'm marking for those inside tenons. I'm marking with a knife because the knife is so much more accurate than a pencil. A pencil can be a 32nd or even a 16th pistol of a line. The razor line is just really sharp and crisp. What you're seeing I'm doing here, I've actually never done this before. I usually cut out the waste on the inside of the double mortises. On the double tenons, with a tenon saw. And I do it by hand. It's just a tenon saw and a coping saw. But I'm actually trying to take these out with a dado stack on the table saw. And it was a little sketch, especially on the longer pieces. I could see how you could get in trouble doing it, but it actually worked out really well, and it was pretty quick and it was very accurate. So pretty happy with how that turned out. I'm on another piece here, and as you can see, there's a little bit of waste left over on that one if there wasn't on one of the other pieces. Maybe the leg was a little bit wider than some of the others. I'm not real sure. But that's why we go through and we individually mark every single one and do each one individually so we can have those perfect fits. Then what you're seeing I'm doing here is I'm just coming in with a chisel and knocking out all that waste. I could have moved my fence in and took that out on the dado stack. But like I said, I had to come in with a chisel and pare down that knife line anyway. So it's just as quick and easy just to come in with a chisel and knock all that out. So I just continue to knock out that waste, and I'm careful not to go into my knife line. I'm going to slowly work up to that knife line, and I'm going to get within about a 16th or 32nd from that knife line. After that, you can see I just come in by hand, getting a little closer there. And then here it is, I just come in by hand, going right into that knife line, and I'll just pare down that knife line. This will give you perfect crisp shoulders every time. It's a little bit time consuming. It takes a long time to do this. And as you can see here, it's not quite fitting yet, which is good. That's what I wanted. I left them a little bit proud. So I'm just checking the fit, seeing where I need to take off. And when I push these in here, I can actually tell, you can tell by the shiny spots where it's hitting, and that will tell me where I need to come in with a rabbet plane and take a little bit off. So I actually did not check those yet. I'm not real sure why. I decided to come in and cut the other shoulders before I actually dialed in that fit. I'm not really sure what my reasoning was on there. I'm just coming in with a mortise gauge and marking where I want my tenons to end, registering my piece up to those mortise lines. Again, coming in with a knife, offering my knife up to those mortise gauge lines. And these can actually be a little bit loose on your outside shoulder lines. They don't have to be tight. You can have a little bit of a loose tenon. So actually just coming with a pencil is a lot easier to see. And I'm just marking those with my Starrett rule. And after I have them marked out, I'm just coming in with a carcass saw. Probably should have been using a rip saw here, and I grabbed a crosscut saw. Not really sure what I was thinking there. But I'm just cutting those excess off the shoulder and cut right down to my shoulder line. Careful not to go into my shoulder line. And what you're going to see here is I'm taking a chisel and I'm actually just paring right into that knife line we made. What this is doing is it's going to make a knife wall, and we can come in with our dovetail saw and we can offer it right up into that knife wall and cut right down to our other cuts. So it's important you don't actually cut into your knife wall here. You can ruin your perfect shoulders. So if anything, I actually prefer to cut a little bit away from my knife wall, and then I can come back with a chisel and pare down into that knife wall, and you get those nice, perfect, crisp shoulders every time. Now I'm putting the piece back in the vise, checking my fit. You can see there's still a little bit fitting a little tight. So it's important you don't have your pieces too tight, because then when you push them in, you can actually squeeze all the glue out and then you won't have a good joint. So you want the piece tight, but not overly tight. It kind of just takes a little bit of trial and error and just experience to know, like when you have that perfect fit. It's really not easy to explain. You just kind of have a feel for it. Now I'm coming in with a Stanley 78 rabbet plane, and like I said, I dial these in by hand. That way I make sure that I have a nice perfect fit on every one of these. It's really important that you have a good fit on your tenons. That way you have good joints that can last a really long time. If you don't have good fitting joints, it really kind of defeats the whole purpose of putting all the time into making traditional mortise and tenons. See my dog there in the background just chilling. He likes hanging out with me in the shop. Really wish I could get him to start helping me, but he just kind of lays there and sleeps on the job, but it's okay. So I actually cut my tenons a little long. I wasn't sure where my knife lines were going to be, so I left them a little proud. So I just came in with my Starrett, figuring out my depth, marking my depth again with the knife. This can usually be a little bit awkward, but And after I get those marked, again, I'm just gonna come in with a saw and just cut off that waste. I'm actually using the appropriate saw that time. Checking my fit, and it looked like it was hitting there in the middle a little bit, so I'm just going to come with a chisel, pare down, try to see where it's still hitting and try to take that out. Alright, so now we're on the chair back and we're cutting the mortises out on the chair backs. Now this piece is curved and obviously we need to have a flat reference line. So I'm going to show you how we do that. So first I'm cutting my mortises out and then we'll worry about getting that flat shoulder line later. Pretty good shot there of the mortise working and doing its thing. Then again, just back over the table saw, cutting those shoulders for the tenons. So the reason why we use double mortise and tenons is because it allows for a lot more gluing surface. You have double the gluing surface with the double mortise and tenons. And with having that much gluing surface, it just makes for a really nice strong joint that will be able to hold up and last a long time. So it's really important that you use proper joinery. Kind of just repeating what we just did. Cutting most of the waist out to the shoulders on the table saw, coming in with a hand saw. Cutting my outer shoulder lines. Careful not to go into your knife wall. I make this look easy. I have done hundreds and hundreds of these, so I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty accurate with a hand saw. So if this is your first time or if you haven't done very many, it never hurts to slow down and really take your time on there. So, okay, so here we are. I'm coming in with a hand plane, and I'm actually going to hand plane this down and make a flat surface there for my shoulders. So there's two ways you can do that. You can actually fit your shoulders to your piece, or you can fit your piece to your shoulders. I actually prefer to fit the piece to the shoulders and keep my shoulders flat. It's a lot easier to do it that way, and you usually get a lot more crisp lines. I'm just checking there, make sure that I'm actually happy with that fit. So I made a little bit of a mistake there. If you've seen, that tenon was a little bit loose, which if you have that, it's okay. What you can do is you can actually just cut a little bit of a shim, glue it on, wait for it to dry, come back through and recut that tenon. So like I said, fitting the piece to the shoulders. So what I'm doing here is I actually marked where that shoulder line is going to be for the front of the chair. I have a block there, and I'm using it as a reference, and I'm just paring down to my knife lines there, creating a nice shoulder there for my shoulders and my tenons to butt up to. You can see I made a little bit more of a mistake there. That wall there was going to be intended to stay there, but you can see I had a little bit of chip out. So we'll see later how we're going to fix that. With every piece that you build, no matter how long you do it, you're always going to have a little bit of a setback, and it's important to know that you know how to fix your mistakes and move on from it. The nice thing about woodworking is there's no such thing as a mistake that's not repairable. You can always usually try to figure out a way to move on from it. So here we are. I pretty much just eyeballed where I thought that was pretty well level. Use that as a prop to hold it up, clamp it on there, cut the mortises out. Again, double mortise and tenons. All my mortises on here are all double mortise and tenons. So then here we are back to, like I said, I had that little bit of chip out there. So I'm just going to come in using a spoke shave and a chisel, and I'm just going to kind of reshape this part a little bit, and we'll reshape it, and it'll look like it was always supposed to be that way. I really like these bog spoke shaves. So if you never used a spoke shave, it works just like a hand plane. They take a little bit of getting used to, but it's like having a really short bodied hand plane, and they're really quite handy. Just coming in with a card scraper here, taking out any hand tool marks, trying to clean it all up. I'm using the edge of my card scraper. If I remember correctly, that card scraper is pretty dull. Should have been burnished and sharpened, but we were making do. So, all right, we're just checking our fits. Making sure we're happy with everything. That piece there, I remember it was such a nice fit. We're going to offer this into the vise. I'm actually not quite sure what I was... Oh, yeah. Offered into the vise, and then we're going to put the arm on top of there. All right. And then that's pretty well going to wrap it up for this video. There will be a part 2 when we come in and we finish this. But you can see there all the nice sweeping lines that come in, all the curvature, which really made this piece quite difficult. Looked like I had to come in with a clamp and kind of pull that together. Just checking all my shoulder lines, making sure I'm happy with everything. Using a block so I don't mar up my arm. Checking all my fits. And all right, there we have it, guys. So there's one of the sides, and like I said, come in for part 2, and we are going to finish this thing up. But that's going to close it down for today's video. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you for watching. If you made it all the way through here, I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a comment and like it. If you want to follow part 2, be sure to subscribe.